Good to see you again.
Yeah.
The last time I was here, I wanted to tell you that I learned to manifest, or I should say, your teachings became real when I started to meditate. And
because meditation puts you in the receptive mode, simply said.
Yeah. And I feel like the more I meditate, the more it's almost like the aperture opens, allowing more light in, maybe?
Yes. We want to put another explanation in it, and that is the more you meditate, and we don't mean hours and hours every day, we mean 15 minutes every day. The more you meditate, the more you get out ahead of things vibrationally. The more often you find this receptive mode rather than this one. This one where everybody's acting, everybody's talking, everybody's squabbling, everybody's paying attention to what everybody else is doing. In other words, politics is there, so much of life is there, but meditation puts you there, at least for a little while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I've been getting more and more excited about life because
your inner being is excited about your life. Your inner being is excited about your life, and when you're in the receptive mode of how your inner being is viewing your life, ooh.
See, I'm not even afraid of step one anymore. When I'm worried or something, I don't care, because I know I can go to sleep and wake up and the answer will be there.
So for those of you who are new enough, step one is you ask. Step two is source answers. That's that vortex stuff we were talking about. Step three is you get into the receptive mode. Step four is you become a master at that by meditating every day. And step five is you're not mad at yourself when you're back in contrast, because you understand that the contrast is what puts the stuff in the vortex. So now you've got it all figured out.
Yeah. Well, for me at this point, it's sort of about fine-tuning, because, I mean, like everybody, I'm worried about, well, I wouldn't say worried. I'm concerned about...
Shouldn't say like everybody either.
Well, okay. Like a lot of people, I'm concerned about, normal stuff like money and all of that. But I have found that since I feel like...
We're just going to harass you a little bit. Concerned is what? Concerned is a departure from your inner being.
A little bit of a lack of faith, maybe,
yeah.
I guess.
Well, you can call it whatever you want. It's just attention to the opposite of what you want. It's much more simple. We could call it lack of faith or lack of clarity. It's just attention to the opposite of what you want for a minute, for the moment that you're feeling it.
But as my perceptions have sort of opened, like for instance, after I was in the hot seat the last time I was here, I saw an aura for the first time, and I haven't seen one since. It was yours. And it was like, oh my gosh, I never thought I would see an aura, and there it is. And it was very exciting because I want to expand my perception as much as I should.
So let's talk about that. So we've just been talking about how you're turning vibrations to thoughts and thoughts to things, yes? So in that receptive mode, you saw energy that you translated into something that looked sort of tangible to you. The aura that you saw was something that you usually don't see, because in the receptive mode, you were doing a better job of translating. Recently, this is an example that we've been using a lot lately. We were visiting with a woman who said, I want $100,000 so that I can travel. And it was clear that she meant that once the $100,000 got there, then she would begin the journey. And we wanted her to understand that she had long begun the journey even before the $100,000 would get there. In other words, you're always on that journey. You're always in the state of becoming. And so the contrast is part of the journey, and the developing of the vortex is part of the journey, and the getting to the receptive mode is part of the journey, and then the receiving of this idea and this idea and this idea and this idea that leads to this. So...
Well, so that's where the question comes in.
Yes.
The question is this. All right, I perceived an aura, yours. Now, I've had other experiences that I would call maybe paranormal. And my question is...
Stop calling it paranormal. This is really going to help you, because the recognition that in the receptive mode you had a different experience than you usually have is really good evidence that you, number one, can find the receptive mode, and number two, can recognize it when you find it, and number three, you're able to translate things into different things when you're in the receptive mode. So when you call it paranormal or out of the ordinary, or when you call it a miracle, or when you call it unbelievable or amazing, What you're emphasizing is, I'm not usually in that mode, and so I usually don't see those things. And we want you to switch that around, and the understanding is I can go there because I want to, and when I do, these different things happen.
Well, I think with perception, the question comes in about what role does imagination play in all of this? Because
we want to talk about this fully with you, but what's perception? Let's define what perception is. Isn't perception your in this moment ability to translate the vibration into something that is tangible and meaningful to you?
Yeah.
Isn't perception what we've been talking about all morning as we talk about turning thoughts to things? So isn't the ability to perceive something before it's tangible really to your advantage, because that way you're allowing it to continue to gather momentum so that it evolves and becomes more?
Yeah.
So if you want to couple perception with imagination, isn't imagination what we were trying to say to that woman? It's the money coming to you before, in other words, isn't that part of the momentum?
Well, yes, but I don't want my imagination to create something that isn't true, I guess. Like, I don't want to say, all right, well, I sort of believe in auras, and so I perceive something and it's not a real thing, I guess, if that makes sense.
Well, then you're in deep doo-doo. Because that just caused you to completely disregard this vortex that we wrote a whole book about. Because it is so real. Esther said to us one day, in the very early days of receiving us, she said, Abraham, but it's true. And we said, we wouldn't let something that you've identified as true be the criteria for giving our attention to it, because everything that anybody gives their attention to becomes true. So we said to Esther, a better criteria would be, how does it feel when I give my attention to it? So your imagination is one of those important realization steps along the way.
Well, and that's why...
And you can tell by the way you feel whether what you're creating, whether you're going to really like it when it manifests or whether you're not going to like it when it manifests.
I've listened to a lot of people ask questions about things like aliens and angels and things like that, and you know, your answer is usually about, well, you know, whatever it means to you is sort of what's important. But
until you are overrun in the streets with aliens, we think you should give up that problem.
Well, I mean, I'm with you. I'm right here in this life, but like I was hiking through the woods and I perceived nature spirits. And I don't know what to make of that. I don't know if I just imagined it or if it was real or what to think of the situation.
How did it feel?
It felt great.
Wasn't real. If it had been trolls and devils and creepy crawly things, now that's real. But that really good stuff, you've got to be making that all up.
That's what I'm afraid of, I think. I don't know, it was like non-human. It wasn't a human consciousness. It was a group consciousness, and it sort of gave me some energy and my arm vibrated, and then I thought, well, I don't know if that was real or not, but I want to believe that it was real.
Well, you're walking around all day, every day, with everyone that you've ever known and many that you haven't known who have reemerged in a non-physical, who are like us, who are aware of you, who are focused with you and flowing with you. And when you're out in nature and you're enjoying yourself and you're not pushing against anything, it would be a very normal thing for you to feel the whole of us flowing through you. But we really want to speak to the dilemma that you seem to be having about accepting the realness of what is unseen, because it really is what's going on with all of humanity. It's what slows you down so much. Most humans really don't want to contemplate anything that everybody else doesn't see and agree on, which is so interesting because you don't see and agree on hardly anything. You see things and you think that the way you're seeing it is the way everybody else is seeing it until it gets right down to it. And then you realize that you're living as many different worlds as you walk down the street with the people who are walking down the same street as there are the numbers of you who are walking down the street. There are not two of you having the same experience about anything. So really what you're wanting to do is to get into that receptive mode and find out what your inner being is seeing until you convince yourself that that is the dominant state of being, that state of invincibility, that state of love and passion, that state of well-being, that state of worthiness, that is who you really are. And anything less than that is what the distortion is, not that.
Okay.
The nature spirits are not the distortion.
Right.
Pollution is.
I don't think I would have even worried about the experience, but since Jerry reemerged in non-physical, I mean, my brother did too, about a year ago, and I'm not worried about him at all. I'm not grieving over it, but I would like to sort of catch up with him, see what, how it's going. And so I figure the more my perception opens up, the more I can sort of allow interaction with my brother again. So that's part of my feeling about that.
There is so much eagerness on the part of so many to not just play with you. We're playing with you all day, every day. But when you acknowledge it and don't freak out and think that we're a nature spirit that you're making up in your mind. When you ask and receive and ask and receive and ask and receive, after a little while you start to accept the whole continuity of all of it. You begin to accept the wholeness of all of it. And in time you begin to accept your worthiness in the reception of it. And that's the part that you're working on right now. Because right now, when it happens, you want to doubt it. And when you doubt it, then it distorts it. So just little by little.
Okay.
Just the existence. Now, some, when they are in a room like this with Esther flowing, the consciousness of Abraham, some don't understand what's happening. Some don't believe it. There's great debate out there in the airwaves about the realness of what's going on here. As far as Esther is concerned, from her point of view, it's something that she's writing about as she's sort of focus wheeling and getting ready to come and stand here and allow Abraham to flow. From her point of view, the bigness of this and the amazement of this and the awesomeness of this and the flow of this and the ease of this and the knowing of this and the love of this. In other words, she's reached the place where it doesn't matter to her what one other person or all other people on the planet are understanding or not understanding about it, because it is what it is to Esther. And so as she's moving around in her own experience, because her own experience is somewhat different from this, because you add to the flow of this, you add to the call of this, you add to the momentum of this. So when Esther's having an Abraham experience, it is this free flowing awesome experience that doesn't allow for one iota of doubt anywhere in Esther's consciousness. The experience of it, 30 something years of standing before you for hour after hour after hour and having the streaming of consciousness, Esther has no doubt about this. But from time to time, she doubts her ability to tune into the frequency when she reads an email that makes her mad. Because she knows that she is diverging from what her inner being is. And she would say to Jerry from time to time, I think I should just go get Abraham, and that you should just be married to Abraham, and that you and Abraham can just walk around together, and you can just live. And Jerry said, it wouldn't be nearly as much fun. And Esther took that to mean, I like you pretty much, let's see how it goes a little longer. And so just trust and care about the way you feel and care about the receptive mode, care about feeling good more than all other things put together, and then do your evaluation. But if you're not feeling good and things are manifesting and you're doing your evaluation from this squabbling point of view, you're not ever going to realize who you really are. And your brother and Jerry and all of us are meeting you in this good feeling receptive mode, you see. Yeah.
I see auras and nature spirits. There, I said it. Okay.
You're a sort of freak, aren't you?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. This is a really good time for a segment of refreshment.